Australia's economy is losing steam with GDP barely budging at 0.2% last quarter and output per person actually falling. The Reserve Bank could slash interest 150 basis points, taking the cash rate to 2.85% in a bid to reignite Aussie growth. So, as households tighten their belts, the big question is, how can businesses pivot to survive and thrive? We're joined by Dr. Steve Entickett, of course, from CIA Tax, and also the host of Money Matters right here on Ticker. Good to see you. We've been hopeful for a while that things will get better, but the bad news for the economy persists.
Well, one of my favourite passions, and yours as well, is economics and politics. And I really hate the way the buggers, and I could have used another B word there, they mess with our minds. They really do. You know, capital expenditure in Australia, or in capital investment in Australia, has been falling for a very long time, especially in that COVID period and post-COVID period. That was replaced by government spending. Now, governments have got to a point where they spent so much it created this inflation bubble that they had to get the RBA to raise interest rates. Now governments are out of money, they can't spend, businesses aren't spending, so all of a sudden there's no private expenditure, no
and they're
public
trying to
expenditure.
find other ways to
so
bring
what they're going to do
in.
is they go, okay, well, how about we reduce your interest rates lower and lower till you start spending? Yeah. So they are messing with our brains, and I think, you know, once you start to acknowledge that these guys do mess with our brains with that political spending, private spending, RBA, etc., you start to understand the cycle a bit better, and how you as a business have got to change and react to it. Because if you sit there waiting on government, you're going to end up going out the back door.
Well, waiting and hoping that things will improve doesn't seem to be much of a strategy. Talk to us about what businesses should and could be doing as a way to survive and to pivot, because we see plenty of examples of particularly larger businesses that just will not change and find it easier to shut down than to change.
Well, let's talk about a large TV show like something like The Project,
or
which
Q&A, which we're now seeing as well.
That's right.
These big expensive things.
That's right.
The money just isn't there anymore, and they carry on as if it is.
That's right, and they have been able to be, you know, the fat has been there because there has been the revenue matched to that industry where you could have 60 people on staff to produce one show every night.
But it began declining. The advertising revenue began declining 10 years ago.
That's right.
But they couldn't change their processes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so when that happens, you end up in a pretty difficult place.
And really, you know, it's like death by 1,000 cuts to a degree, until the point where it gets to the final cut. So any of these high-cost TV shows or high-cost businesses or whatever, it is only a matter of time. You really need to be on a very thin expense to revenue budget at the moment, because you won't survive. Things will change very quickly in the economy ahead. If you're relying on fat revenues to provide a fat business, I can tell you you're in trouble in the next 10 years.
Yeah, it's interesting. Over the weekend, I was at one of my favourite coffee shops, a guy my age who's built up an empire of 3 coffee shops across Bayside Melbourne, now having to sell 2, going down to 1. And we spoke about how frustrating it is to be at this age where we're meant to be in the absolute, money earning point of our lives, and yet the economy is going the other way. We spoke about how it felt like the only thing you can do right now is be a turtle, hide in your home and wait for it to pass. Yeah,
or be a very small, lean machine, and that's the way to handle these economies. But that was my first tip. I got 5. So the other thing we've got to look at is, we're a bit, Ticker's a global network. You've got to look around the world. You know, in places like Australia where the fat is being trimmed and people are pulling back and there's thrift and all that sort of thing going on, cost of living's rising, less discretionary spending. There are other countries around the world, Africa or India, Asia, wherever it might be, they're actually in booming middle class economies. So if you're a local business and you can have a global perspective, now's the time to look outside the Australian bubble or the Canada bubble or whatever bubble you're in, and start to go, okay, what else is doing around the world, and adapt your product, your service, whatever it might be, to suit those countries.
And some of the other points?
Yeah, number 3, whether we like it or not, the green transition is happening, and it will continue to happen. We are going to be electrified in the Western world, and it will slowly dribble out over the next 50, 100 years, whatever it might be around the world. So number 3 is focus on that green transition. No matter what you believe in from a carbon point of view, we are going down that pathway. So if you can provide services that support that green transition, then I think you're going to be in a very good position.
And if there's one thing we know, the government will be spending money there.
That's right.
What's number 4?
Number 4 is, it's funny, you know, I was in Singapore recently, and they actually had an advertising campaign, because in Singapore they import all their manual labour, they import their trades, because people in Singapore don't want to be tradespeople. No, they think they're above that. They're actually using Australia as an example. The new rich in Australia are the tradespeople, the electricians, the carpenters, the builders, the plumbers. They're actually doing very, very well across the industry. So if you're looking at that from a global perspective, look at the Australian model. The tradesperson in Australia is a highly skilled, high income, very tax efficient structure.
And so, number 5?
Number 5, the last one, I love this one, it's data. We are in a big data world. Now, the people that can make the link between gathering that data, actually interpreting and understanding that data, and turning that into a human-based product are going to do very well. So we're all collecting data in some way, shape or form. The governments are collecting data, businesses are collecting data. It's having the skills can look at that data and say, how do I turn that into a service? How do I turn that into a product? And I actually find that quite exciting.
All right, so become a tradie who's good with data.
Well, I think if you'd be really ahead of the curve then. But I think what I'm trying to get across is the world is changing. The governments are messing with our mind, moving the interest rates around. It's going to get cheaper. The consumer will have more money to spend. But let's not rely on that cycle. Let's look over the horizon, and there are 5 key areas you can really look at as a business to adapt into.
All right, appreciate your time as always, Dr. Steve Entickett. Thank you.